Hey folks, how you doing? Danny Burke with BurkeSpeed.com here with you on Tuesday, September 26th with tons to cover from not only this past week in the NFL, we'll do our betting recap from NFL Week 3, our segment called Where's the Beef, where I tell you who I got beef with from this past week in the National Football League. We've got an early preview for NFL Week 4. Well, I guess it's somewhat early. I mean, it's Tuesday. It's not incredibly early, but a play that I have made for the upcoming slate of games in the National Football League, along with others that I'm pondering as of this moment, and some we'll keep an eye out for. So, an early NFL Week 4 preview. And then, folks, we're going to actually get back to the diamond and bet some baseball. It's been a minute since we've got into the baseball action, right? I mean, football's been consuming everything, but now that we're getting down to the very end of the Major League Baseball season, there are a couple games that present value, not only because of the specific matchup, but because of what incentives are on the line, right? What teams need to win to clinch their respective playoff spots. So a couple make the list for me today, and we'll get that toward the end of the show. But let's go ahead and begin our betting recap from NFL Week 3. Well, we started off with the teaser, 6.5-point guy with Jacksonville, had them down to -2.5, and paired that with the Dolphins, who we got to a pick'em. And we could have teased them up, obviously, to about 49.5 points because the Dolphins did more than enough to take care of business with that 50-point dub against Russell Wilson and the Broncos. But then, of course, Jacksonville falls short. More on them in a bit. I think you know where I'm going with it. So we lost out on that one at the price of -$1.30. I mean, it was one thing if Jacksonville was going to keep the game close, but another just to get embarrassed like that. There was no hope at any point in the game, really, because even when there was the slightest amount of maybe getting into I have hope for this game, that's when they end up letting number 47, the fullback, whoever the hell it was, get a kickoff return for a touchdown. Whatever. We'll get into it in a sec. So we had that, but then we bounced back with Kenneth Walker, anytime touchdown, plus 102. And I know even after I bet it, it moved a little bit, not saying because of me, but by the time maybe it was dished out, I still think you could have got about even money. So hopefully you're able to cash in, on the plus money price there with Kenneth Walker. So yeah, he kind of salvaged that loss from the Jaguars on our teaser. And then we were just sweating out the Bengals, which I tweeted out, wrote about throughout the past week, and their money line had gone all the way as low, at least when I got it, was -130, but then it was as high as like -170, -180 once the news of Joe Burrow playing came out. But we expected that. That's what I discussed last week and said, hey, get on this sooner rather than later because it looks like there is optimism that Joe Burrow is going to play. Lo and behold, he does play. Lo and behold, the Bengals get the dub for us. We end up 2-1 on the week, and we move our NFL betting record to 7-5-1 plus 1.02 units on the year. All right, let's keep it in that positive column, folks. I'll tell you why we're looking at that momentarily. Oh, and I forgot, by the way, we're going to be doing a futures update. So, yeah, stick around for that, of course. Where's the beef?
Where's the beef?
The beef that I have with none other than the Jacksonville Jaguars. How could it not be with the Jaguars? I get it. You historically struggle against your division foe, the Texans, for whatever reason, but this is supposed to be a franchise in Houston that is on the complete opposite spectrum as you, Jacksonville. And it's one thing to look poor against the Kansas City Chiefs. You know what? It stinks, but it's excusable because it's the freaking Kansas City Chiefs. But then when you allow it to happen against the Houston Texans with a rookie quarterback, a brand new head coach, and they torch you out there on the field, that is beyond inexcusable. Trevor Lawrence didn't play that bad of a game. I mean, he was 27 of 40, 279 passing yards in the air, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. His receivers weren't helping him out worth a damn, and it doesn't help when they're allowing the fullback or whoever the hell it was to get that kickoff return for a touchdown. At the one point, you had the slightest amount of hope in that game, and then at that point, of course you knew they were screwed. I mean, you kind of knew beforehand if you had them for a survivor entry or if you had them in a teaser. Unfortunately, I was in both categories, like I'm sure a lot of people were. And then it was just Jacksonville looked like Jacksonville of what, 3 years ago? 2 years ago. I mean, my goodness, those are supposed to be the games that you don't even have to worry about if you're in a position that Jacksonville's in. But hey, credit to CJ Stroud. He did look good. Yeah, he looked really good. And then Tank Dell looked fantastic. And leave it to Jacksonville to make them appear like they've been playing in the league for years and years. And they know what the heck they're doing. Because apparently they did in that game. And that's all thanks to the ineptitude of Jacksonville. Man, get your boy Lawrence some help. Receivers, figure it the hell out. Defense, maybe don't leave this Tank Dell rookie guy wide open so he can get a $150 in the air. I mean, are you kidding me? Figure it out, man. And look, now you can get Jacksonville, I think plus 135 is the best number for them to win the division. I still believe in them. I still think they'll take care of business. It's just frustrating as hell that a team like the Jaguars were the demise of people's survivor entry and a ton of teasers, especially when the other leg of it had the Dolphins winning by 50. But hey, that's how it goes sometimes, unfortunately. But Jacksonville, time for you to figure it the hell out. You've got my beef from NFL Week 3. All right, folks, let's move on to our futures discussion here and recap what action we had last week. I hope you're able to read the article that I threw out there because, well, obviously those numbers are not the same after what transpired this past week. Let's start with the man who had his team put up a 50-point margin of victory, none other than Mike McDaniel and the Miami Dolphins. I discussed Mike McDaniel plus 850 for Coach of the Year. Was it the best number you could have gotten? Of course not. It was a lot better before the season began. But I didn't get involved in that market, so I wanted to see it play out a little bit and then look at it from that perspective going forward. And last week I thought was potentially one of the last chances we were going to get for a price as high as plus 850 on Mike McDaniel. Why did I think that? Well, again, you can look more in depth in the analysis in the write-up. A long story short, as funny as it may seem, that little running thing he did, look, it's something that prompts him up, and the public adores it, and he gets discussed, and they were looking amazing, were the Dolphins, right? He's a younger and up-and-coming coach with an incredibly dominating offense, and knowing what greatness they have already displayed up to that point, you thought he was a worthy candidate, right? And then you look ahead at their upcoming schedule. All right, well, is it good to buy in on this now, or can we wait and maybe get a better number or the same number, but just see how things play out? Well, you knew the Denver Broncos were coming to town. No, you probably didn't think they were going to put up 70 points, but look, I wrote up about this and why I like them in the teaser as well. I mean, look, the Broncos defense is trash. They showed signs of that considering they let Sam Howell look like a superstar the week prior. And then Mike McDaniel puts up 70 points. Even talks about, I didn't want to run the score up. I didn't want to break the record. Trying to be a good guy. All right, the public applauded him for that. But now you can get him the best number at just plus 400. I saw him as low as plus 225, I believe, at Caesar. So 4-1 is now the best price you can get on McDaniel. But hopefully you jumped in on with us at plus 850. Awesome job from him and the Dolphins this past week. Couldn't have asked for a better outcome in terms of our bet at plus 850. So that's the Coach of the Year bet that we'll be sweating out going forward. And that's the update on where his prices are at. All right, the other one we discussed, Panthers under 5.5 wins, plus 125. Now, again, I discussed this in the article. I realized that they were like 7.5 on their win total heading into the year. But the Panthers, among a handful of other teams, I attributed as being a huge question mark team, meaning I wanted to see how they played out because I have no idea what to expect from them. We expected their offensive line to perhaps be a concern, and it has been one. We perhaps expected Bryce Young to be a little bit slow to get acclimated, maybe not this slow, but he has looked very, very slow. And he, of course, was out this past week. The Red Rock and Andy Dalton came in, didn't do anything great against the Seahawks. But knowing how terrible this Panthers team had appeared in just 2 games, I thought, all right, well, 5.5. Looking at the remaining schedule, I'm not going to go all through it. It's in the article if you want to. I really only had one game where I felt confident that they would win or be a favorite. The rest of them were losses or toss-ups. And then, knowing that they had the Seahawks the upcoming week, I went, well, they're going to lose this game. And after they do, the odds won't be the same. Meaning the 5.5 win total with the under at plus 125 was not going to still be there after they lost to the Seahawks, which of course it's not, because now the best price you can get on them is still 5.5, but with the odds at minus 148. Big difference from minus 148 as opposed to plus 125. The minus 148 is available at FanDuel, by the way. Look, if you don't mind laying the price, I still think obviously it's a great bet because I still need them to stay under 5 in the hook, which I think they absolutely will. It's just a bummer if you didn't get the plus money to do so. But again, if you don't mind laying it, I have no doubt that they will stay under 5.5 wins. And who knows if Young's going to be back in the mix this upcoming week. Honestly, I think Dalton may be a little bit better than Young at this point. Don't hold me to that one necessarily, but Young looks completely all over the place. He doesn't have any receiving help. The offensive line is trash. He's a little bit undersized. It's absolutely going to be a struggle for this team, and the schedule does not benefit them whatsoever. So still enamored with the under 5.5. We're sweating it out at the price of plus 125. And let's talk about Jalen Carter then. I mean, this one I didn't bet, unfortunately, but we did talk about it. Something to keep an eye on, I mentioned, because he was 3-1, and it was something that I didn't want to chase the steam on per se, and I kind of wanted to wait it out because Will Anderson's been doing pretty well, and perhaps this market was going to be a little bit more competitive, and it still might be, but talked about how great he had been and how just me as a Bears fan knowing they passed on him that he would inevitably win this award. But look, being on a great team like the Eagles is only going to help him. Primetime game action and more spotlight on him, and that's what you saw last night, right? I mean, and he had a fantastic performance against the Bucs. 2 total tackles, half a sack recorded, and 2 forced fumbles. Back-to-back primetime games for Jalen Carter, where it looks like he's just getting better and better. Now the best number you can get him, plus 110 for Defensive Rookie of the Year at FanDuel. If you want to bet it, so be it. Just know you could have gotten the 3-1 last week, and I'm sure even better the weeks leading up into that. There's an update on Jalen Carter. Let's hope that Will Anderson plays spectacularly so we can get back in the mix of a better price with one Jalen Carter. And some win total bets I had before the year. Won't spend too much time on this, but we had the Falcons under 8.5 at plus 110. Now you can get them still, like last week when we were talking about it. They're at 9.5. Plus 107 at Bet Rivers. I do not hate the idea of jumping back in on that. Right now, personally, I'm going to sit comfortably on the 8.5. But if you haven't gotten involved, I still absolutely like that position for the plus money under 9.5. And the big reason why is Desmond Ridder. I mean, I said this coming into the year. What do the Falcons see in this guy that leads you to believe he is going to make this team a 9-win squad? Look, the running game with Bijan, awesome. The defense is honestly very improved, to my dismay. I didn't think they were going to be that much improved, but they have been. But they lost this past week. That's a game I'm kicking myself for now. I was so close to getting on that. Look, hindsight's 20/20, but the Lions took care of business. The Falcons don't have a passing game with all of the weapons they have. They can't utilize them properly because Ridder is restricted and he can't win on the road. And look, the schedule, there are going to be some tough bumps along the way. And it comes this week in London against Jacksonville too. And more on that in a sec. But yeah, I still like the Falcons under that win total of 9.5. If you feel attracted to it, I have no issues, of course, with you jumping in on it. Right now, I'm going to just stay locked into my 8.5 because I'm already invested. But if you aren't, I think that's a great look for you. Commanders, we had under 6.5 at minus 118. You can either do 7.5 under minus 139 at Bet Rivers or the 6.5, the unders plus 125. Look, the Commanders will lose this week to the Eagles, and then the 7.5 probably not going to be there. The plus money on the 6.5 probably isn't going to be there. But Bieniemy will have this offense looking good enough. And like I even said before, look, that game against the Broncos really ticked me off, not only because I bet the Broncos, but because of this win total. I mean, they only have a finite amount of wins they need to get over it, and that should have been a game they lost. And we said, though, what I was trying to say is that the Commanders are going to be competitive in a lot of games. I don't think they're going to end up winning a lot of them, but they will be competitive. Luckily, they weren't last week against Buffalo, but against a division opponent in Philadelphia, they probably will, but I don't think they'll win. So again, if you haven't gotten in on it, I don't know if I would look for the 6.5, even though it's plus money. The 7.5, even though you're laying a price, is where I would gravitate toward more so. But you probably, again, unless you think it's going to move drastically after losing to the Eagles, you probably can hold off. But still, man, I mean, that 7.5 is kind of tempting. Again, if you haven't gotten invested yet. And then we had the Jets under 9.5 wins plus 125. We know the situation there. It is what it is. But yeah, nothing. Just hanging on to the 9.5 under plus 125. All right, let's go ahead and move on to NFL Week 4, a play that I have made and some plays that I'm considering for the upcoming slate of events. Now, once I have all my plays official, I will do a full article, tweet it out, put it on the website, the same thing I've been doing the past couple of weeks. So make sure to keep a lookout for that. But the play that I do have right now, our first one for NFL Week 4, who'd have thunk it? The team that cracked the list for Where's the Beef also gets the nod for the first bet of the upcoming card. Yes, the Jacksonville Jaguars over the Atlanta Falcons. That's what I'm rocking with for my first wager of the week. So Jacksonville gets to play in a spot they are very familiar with out in London against this Falcons squad. The Falcons, not as much familiarity playing in this unique setting. They have a young group together that's inexperienced overall, but not really sure how to get acclimated in a spot like this for a football game. The advantage in that regard does go to the Jaguars. How much is it worth? Well, that's up for you to decide, but I think it's enough to point even more so in a positive direction for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And what have I been saying about this Falcons team from the summer to now? Vastly overrated. Desmond Ridder, not a good quarterback. He's at minus 6.3% completion percentage over expected. His success rate as a quarterback just at 42%. He has not been performing efficiently. He's also gotten sacked 12 times on the year. How do you manage that? I guess him being mobile, but certainly this Falcons team has a bunch of flaws, and this is a time for Jacksonville to expose them, much like the Lions did. Now, last week I, uttered the same sentiment with the Jags against the Texans, right? Sort of a get-right spot. Hey, division game, they've had terrible outcomes against this Texans team, regardless who the coach and quarterback is as of late. I can't explain it. It's something wonky, but that unfortunately transpired. And again, the Jacksonville secondary and just pass defense in general got torched. But this should be a spot where they can at least look somewhat competent, knowing that Ridder is not an efficient passer, he doesn't utilize the plethora of weapons that he has available to him, and that they're probably going to hone in on the run game to where Jacksonville actually ranks 4th in DVOA run defense. All right, so if they can limit that and they get a lead early against this Falcons defense that, yes, has improved, but also ranks 22nd in pass defense according to DVOA, then at some point, like we're going to see in a lot of these games, Ridder will be forced to throw because a running game isn't going to be dominant enough to keep up against good offenses. So then, Jacksonville, against a weaker quarterback, hopefully should be able to limit what kind of success he has in the passing efforts. So that's why, among this game being in a unique setting where the Jags already have that advantage, points me in a direction to trusting Jacksonville. Despite London always being kind of those wonky spots, look, I think it's a good opportunity for them. And yes, Lawrence has been underwhelming, but he hasn't gotten a lot of help from his teammates. You have to hope, even though it's week 3, that last week was a wake-up call for this team. You can have that loss against Kansas City. You'll live with that. It's okay. It's one of the best teams in however many years that we've seen. You can't do that against the Texans. Time to wake up and time to take advantage against an overrated Falcons squad. Now, the spread at -3, not in love with laying the flat 3. Why? Well, because one, again, the Jaguars still are looking like a pretty sloppy team. So this may be a sloppy game because they're not all put together. They're not organized on both sides of the ball. And because these games in London are usually a little bit all over the place. And if you shop around right now, -148 is the money line price I see. I'd rather take that on the money line as opposed to laying the flat 3 and potentially pushing there. So that's what I played, -148 on the money line. I believe FanDuel and DraftKings are the 2 books that have that available. So make sure you shop around. And I think this line will keep moving in favor of Jacksonville. Maybe not a lot. It's not going to get to like 4, I don't think. You may start seeing some 3 in the hooks, but even if you don't, I think the money line will probably continue to tick up. But I'm going with Jacksonville out there in London against Desmond Ridder and the Falcons, -148 for Trevor Lawrence and the crew. Hopefully they can turn things around and look like the team I pegged them being heading into this season. All right, so let's move on then to some games and other areas I'm considering betting. And look, this one I was close to pulling the trigger, but I'm holding off for now. because I'm trying to find reasons why I shouldn't bet it, and I just think I should let the market kind of play this thing out a little bit. But the Colts money line versus the Rams. Colts about minus 115. Now, the Rams, and this isn't even an overreaction, right? I mean, I already told you the Rams outside of their division, why like the Bengals, are not going to be as good as they appeared in the first 2 weeks. Defensively speaking, the Rams are 18th in defensive EPA per play. They're 26th in total DVOA defense. The Colts, 6th best defensively EPA per play, 13th in total DVOA defense. Now, against the run, the Rams have actually been pretty poor. They're allowing 4.5 yards per carry, and they rank 29th against the run according to DVOA. So is it going to be Richardson? Is it going to be Minshew? Well, ideally, it's going to be Richardson in this game. And I say that because he presents that dynamic threat of being able to throw it and run it. And if he is in this game, I think that's a huge benefit against this Rams defense that has been lackluster against the run. Because not only will you have him as an opportunity, which the Bengals didn't have but still managed to push the ball downfield, meaning they didn't have Burrow being able to run like the Colts will with Richardson if he plays, but Zach Moss has been efficient, man. 18 carries for 88 rushing yards in week 1 at Houston, then 30 carries for 122 rushing yards at Baltimore. So if we don't end up on the Colts money line or the Colts in some capacity, perhaps we consider the rushing props for one Zach Moss, or heck, even for one Anthony Richardson. Richardson has 3 rushing touchdowns on the year. He had 3 carries for 35 rushing yards last week once he got taken out. And then, I mean, the first game against Jacksonville, 10 carries, 40 yards, the 1 rushing touchdown. Not too shabby. Obviously, you'd want a little bit more with 10 carries, but you'll still take that. I mean, the 3 for 35, pretty dang good for Anthony Richardson against Houston. So, again, let's keep an eye on those props, see where those get listed at, and also we'll monitor how this market moves and look if it trends back toward the Rams in a heavy amount. Again, maybe that's something that signals that the Rams do have the advantageous look in this game. But Cooper Kupp's still going to be out, right? Matt Stafford's still a liability to get sacked. I think the Colts have the 2nd most sacks in the season thus far. So if the pressure can continue from this Colts defense, it can limit this Rams offense. And then you just ask yourself, all right, how efficient can Richardson be? And I think Mobley speaking, not only him and Zach Moss, they can do enough. So that's what makes it attractive to back the Colts here and to back the rushing props. But we have to wait to see where those props come out at. So this will be a bet I'll definitely be revisiting later in the week. Some other considerations, teaser opportunities. The Eagles, minus 8.5 at home versus the Commanders. Tease them down to minus 2.5. In a division game, think that's a good look. Who would you pair them with potentially? Well, the Ravens catching 2 in the hook on the road in a division spot against the Browns. Tease the Ravens up to plus 8.5. All right, that's a consideration. There's some other ones too, like the Cowboys teasing them down from 7 to minus 1 at home against the Patriots. The Dolphins, I'm sure, are going to be a popular teaser play. They're catching 2 in the hook in a division road game against the Bills. Dolphins just put up 70 freaking points. I'm sure everybody's going to want to tease them up or take their plus money on the money line. But Miami's another one you could potentially consider for a teaser opportunity. I haven't done anything with those teams just yet. Here's a game that is something that I wouldn't normally step in the realm of, and that's laying higher spreads, especially with road teams. Kansas City laying now 9 in the hook on Sunday Night Football against the New York Jets. This thing opened as low as 7 if I'm not mistaken, so it has moved a pretty impressive amount already. Rightfully so. You think Zach Wilson in this Jets offense is going to be able to do anything against the Chiefs? Heck, even if we had the Kansas City Chiefs defense of old where they just were very, very poor, probably not. But now their defense is actually fairly strong. And Zach Wilson in that offense, I would argue, is worse than the Bears in their offense. So to think Kansas City can win by 10 or more, is that out of the realm of possibility? Of course it's not. I'm not even going to finish the sentence because of course they can cover that, and they probably will. Now, again, I usually don't lay these high spreads in road spots, and in primetime games, it's a little scary, but I think it's even scarier to trust Zach Wilson and the Jets. And if the line keeps trending this way, man, I mean, at 10, I'm not going to be shocked to see that get there sooner rather than later. So that one I may add as well. The Chiefs laying 9 in the hook, as gross as that may seem, just based on a pure number standpoint and on prime time for Sunday night on the road. All of those things, we have to consider who the teams are, and especially who the quarterbacks are. They couldn't be any further away on the spectrum from a dominant quarterback to a crap quarterback. So that's what drawing all the attention is having right now with the Chiefs at minus 9.5, and I completely follow that steam. I mean, I get it. How could you not? So that's the other one I'm considering, looking forward to the upcoming week of NFL games. Again, I'll do a full write-up when I have my official plays later in the week. How about some baseball tonight, folks? It's been a little bit since I've gotten into baseball. Yeah, pretty much since the start of the NFL year. I've been consumed with all the NFL action, and that's typically what happens. But look, if we go back to Major League Baseball, a sport that I love to bet in general, especially now where the market's not as focused in on them, perhaps better opportunities, but more so you're getting to the very end of the year where you have teams that are incentivized to win even more than usual because of playoff berths, clinching divisions, wildcards, all of those things, right? And then on the opposite end, you got teams who don't really give a crap anymore. So I think there's two games that present a pretty good opportunity for us here. Let's start in Baltimore. The Orioles taking on the Nationals. Circa opened this one with Baltimore about minus 226. Now they're up to minus 235. Am I looking at the money line? Of course not. I'm looking at the run line. And the best price that you can get here in Illinois on the Orioles, minus 109. Saw that at Bet Rivers. Now, the Orioles 2.5 games ahead of the Rays in the AL East. So this team obviously needs to stay competitive, keep their comfort in their lead, and execute against a pathetic team in the Nationals. All right, maybe that's a little rude. The Nationals have been kind of competitive, but you get my point. They're not doing anything after this regular season. You got Josiah Gray taking the bump for the Nationals. The righties got an ERA of 4 flat this year, but an xFIP of 5.19. And he's walking 4.59 batters per 9 innings. No bueno. No bueno. Kyle Bradish taking the bump for the Orioles. The righty this year has an ERA of 3.01 and a FIP of 3.33. He's also coming off a 6-inning shutout performance on the road against the Houston Astros. So Bradish is feeling himself as of late. So are the Orioles bats. They're 7th in weighted runs created plus against righties since the start of September. The Nationals 15th. All right, not too shabby, not too shabby. But what do we know from these bullpens throughout the entirety of the season? Baltimore's got one of the best. They're 5th in bullpen ERA, 3.62. Washington 27th in bullpen ERA at 5.01. So more often than not, like we've known, the Orioles have the advantage in terms of their relievers. So even if Bradish doesn't have the best performance or if it's a lower scoring game, we can hang our hat on trusting the remainder of the pitching staff, and hopefully those Orioles bats can come alive well enough to cover that run line and dominate against a lackluster pitcher in Gray. So give me Baltimore minus 109 on the run line for our first Major League Baseball play tonight. The other involves an NL Central showdown, another run line play looking at the Brew Crew against the Cardinals. If the Brewers win tonight, they clinch the NL Central. They're putting Adrian Hauser, the righty, out there to hopefully get them in that direction. The last outing he had was actually at St. Louis. He went 6 innings, allowed 4 hits, and just 1 earned run. Brewers got the dub that day, 8-2. Facing off against him, the opposition, in terms of the pitcher, the same one that's there today, Zach Thompson, the lefty. So Thompson didn't have the best outing against Milwaukee there. 5 innings, 5 hits, 4 earned runs allowed. And Zach Thompson was a reliever to start this year. Then he's been converted into a starter. He's had some promising starts, but now after you have that sample size already in your last outing against the Brewers, these bats know what to expect a little bit more so. I think that's a benefit to this Brewers team, right? I mean, Adrian Hauser has seen the Cardinals plenty of time, but don't forget, Arenado's not even in the lineup. So the Cardinals against righties in the month of September, talk about teams that have kind of mailed it in, they're 23rd in weighted runs created plus against righties. Whereas the Brewers against southpaws in the month of September, they rank 10th. Bullpen-wise, Brewers 3rd best ERA, Cardinals 23rd. Again, incentive. Brewers can clinch the division tonight. If the Cardinals want to play spoiler, sure, but I don't really think they give a damn at this point. And even if they did, again, the pitching advantage in my mind goes with Hauser and the Brewers, and especially the offense, and then that bullpen. you can get the Brewers on the run line plus 124. And if you even want a little bit more security, the flat one minus 122 at Bet Rivers. But I'm looking at that plus money, hoping the Brewers can win this game by 2 or more against the Cardinals. So minus 1.5 at the price of plus 124 to wrap up our baseball plays. But overall, folks, the plays that I do have that I dished out to you, we got the Jaguars on the money line, minus $1.48 versus the Falcons. We'll have plenty more NFL action later in the week. Then we got the Orioles minus 1.5 on the run line, minus 109 against the Nationals. And the aforementioned Brewers, plus 124 on the run line, minus 1.5 against the St. Louis Cardinals. All right, that's going to wrap it up for the episode today. Appreciate you tuning in. Remember to check out the website, burkspeak.com, and follow along on Twitter at DannyBurke5. Enjoy the rest of your day, folks. Best of luck with your bets. We'll talk to you again soon.